How are you?
Good. How are you, Joey?
All right, nothing stressful about the next, week of anyone's lives. So we're all very calm. Nothing going on in the news that makes this movie more relevant. Everything's good. No, nothing.
Right, exactly.
Uh, I think it's very interesting to think about like being given the sort of not necessarily raw footage, but being given a pile of movie, right? And being told, I'll help you, but make this work. Like I think it's very funny to think about an editor, right? Like a good editor kind of sees the worst movies ever made, right? Because no first cut is good. It's figuring out where to start the work, I think, is the craziest thing to me. It's got to be so overwhelming. Like, what was the initial? How many hours of footage are you given when you first sit down on this one?
Yeah, I know there's tons of footage. Although probably not as much as like some movies, to be honest,
Yeah,
because we're not, we're shooting on film still. We're not doing like, 10 camera angles at once.
yeah,
So, there's not that. Um, but Paul's process is kind of different. We do daily screenings. I
yeah,
was actually traveling with production. We do daily screenings. So we're kind of like whittling down the takes that we like
yeah.
during production. Like, you know, each night I kind of have like a big binder of notes and I'm kind of like circling stuff. Okay, it's going to be like take 3 or 4. This like long shot we're going to be using like take 7. This is the best one. So I kind of have like decisions are being made. Of course,
Yeah.
we change our mind sometimes, but it kind of gives us like a roadmap. And so I'm kind of assembling stuff as we're shooting. Um, And then for this, we actually had like a hiatus of about like 2 months.
Yeah.
And we had so Paul and I were able to work and we got the prologue pretty much done. We got, we did reshoot some stuff in there, but we had a structure to it, and like a lot of the high school stuff we had, um, and we had the ending. So we had like a lot of stuff. And then so that kind of helped figure out like, okay, these are like the holes, this is the energy that we're like kind of going for. And then we shot the rest, which was like the Benicio section, the Brago Springs, which is like the end of the River of Hills, anything like the desert, and then the Sisters of the Ray Beaver, DNA tests, like all that stuff. So then you kind of have like these contained pieces,
Yeah.
that are kind of their own thing. So it kind of makes it a little bit more like digestible when you're
Like,
like, okay, this is the sensei section, and like you kind of work on that, and then DNA test is its own thing, and then figure out how they're all gonna like piece together.
and I think it's probably kind of necessary for a movie like this, which is tonally tricky, right? Because it is funny. Like it's meant to be funny. It's satirical, but also it's very serious about the serious stuff and kind of sneaks up on you in that way. Like you can't like I do wonder if you just had the lump, if they were just here's 7 hours, right? Please get it down to about three, and then we'll keep going. If you lose something there because you don't necessarily have the chunk that's done to go, okay, we have a real funny bit here. Like that fits as a lighter moment, and then we can ramp it back up, or the car chase, just having that like hand, right? And knowing like that works. We know we have a third act moment, right? I have to imagine that's helpful and probably just confidence building as much as anything else.
Yeah, definitely helpful. It also just kind of puts the pressure off because you're like, okay, we have like this section works, like we have something that works. So it's like now let's focus. Maybe if we were like, oh, we had to, sometimes there's many scenes that get dropped.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of like dropped like during production just because of just the schedule or whatever. So it's like kind of knowing where things work or when you don't need something, then it's an easy like, okay, we can get rid of this scene. So it just helps. And I've been doing this with Paul for so long. I've been working with him for 12 years. Started as an assistant editor, so I know like his process. And we can kind of just looking at the dailies, we can get a sense of like, okay, we have the scene. He doesn't need to see like a fully assembled scene like the next day to say like, okay, we got it. You can get a sense of like there is something here. We can make something here. There's good performances. It's not any technical issues. We're gonna be good.
Which is huge. I mean,
Yeah.
and also for a guy who had to fight, literally had to have his one battle after another with cuts of movies early on to know like I'm at a stage in my career where that's not going to happen. right? I am the final word. Like the movie's getting made because people are okay with that. That obviously I'm sure is a relaxing feeling, and the trust that you guys built over the years to be able to then start looking at stuff and knowing this is a good scene. We're not gonna need it. You can get rid of that like real early on, as opposed to I know this is like in 6 weeks we're gonna get rid of this scene. But if I say it now, it's friction we don't need. Like it's got to be amazing to not have that and not have to worry about that and just go with what
Exactly.
makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, that's why like, when we finally had like a full version of the movie, I think it was maybe just like a little under 3 hours long,
Yeah.
maybe a little over. So it wasn't like this big like a monstrosity,
That was
because we had already
what we
cut
did.
scenes out. We had already cut stuff out, and it was the movie was never going to be 2 hours long. It's just not
Yeah.
possible. So we knew it was going to probably be like around 2.5, a little more something, and then you just are starting to do your normal process of figuring out like what little things you could lift or how you could kind of pre-lap stuff and just that kind of thing.
Oh yeah. And the funny part is it's not that he's not capable. He made Punch Drunk Love 95 minutes. Like it can be done, but also
But this
you
story
know,
doesn't fit that. This
no,
is
no,
not.
no.
This is an epic that can't be 95
I mean,
minutes.
he also hears 3 hours and goes, "Yeah, I've done that." Like it's not impressive to me anymore. That's fine. Like there's
Yeah,
something about a director who can make a short movie and can make a long movie, and they feel correct, right? Because there are people who, without naming names, we know them. Like their movies are long, right? And sometimes they work, and sometimes you go, yeah, you lost 10 minutes, and that'd be a little better. Or especially with comedy, right? Comedy always the thought process is tight, right? As tight as you can be. And I think watching this, that's what makes it work so well as a funny movie is that it doesn't have to worry about like we just hit a joke. We better get to the next one. It can be a while before the next funny thing. And I think
yeah,
that's what makes, Leo falling in what seems like we're going to be watching an action sequence. Like that makes that work so much better because it hits you as like, oh no, this is just good filmmaking as opposed to the internal clock of a filmmaker going, well, we haven't made him laugh in 10 minutes. We really should do that. Like it just makes
yeah,
sense.
yeah. Totally. And I think even like the Christmas adventure scenes, we
Yeah.
do kind of take our time a little bit with those. Um, it's works kind of as a spot where like the audience can like take a breath for a second, but it also is nice to kind of change like the vibe a little bit, and then you're slowly building up to this joke, and it's I don't know, it's nice to kind of live in this kind of these weird rooms,
Yeah.
the few times that we cut to the Christmas adventure scenes, and it's just a different kind of a pace.
And that's where also I think it being, PTA being a brand, right? Almost, right? You sign up for his movie and you don't almost care what it is, right? The people are on board knowing he made a movie. You don't have to see much of that going in. That can be kind of like a reveal. And I love that those scenes take their time because you kind of are letting the audience go like, who are they? Oh, okay. Oh
Yeah.
shit. Oh, Nazis. Oh shit. Oh, like as they get worse and worse, you can be like, oh, we're just sitting with people that are making my skin crawl, and they're just being like soft spoken and polite. Like, oh god, they're almost worse for not being foaming at the mouth. Like, bring back Sean, bring back Sean.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. At least you know what Sean's about. Yeah, these guys are like mysterious.
Oh yeah, and I think being able to cut between such different characters, right, and the way they hold themselves, and the way you can look at Sean Penn walking around and being like, I think he's like doing a Vince McMahon with like the way his like shoulders are moving, or you can see Leo and be like, is he doing his version of like the dude? Like you can kind of live in these moments and nothing's that's like jump to something else. It very much feels like every sequence is its own short film in a way.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's very Paul. He loves the kind of weird eccentricities and like finding these moments and the performances and things that happen on set and like kind of happy accidents. And
Oh, yeah.
they're like, okay, we got to put that in because it just feels more human. It's not so slick. So that's kind of why we love him.
Oh,
So
yeah. I'm curious when you read the script, right? Because obviously you have to, not that you don't want to make the movie, but you want to know what you're getting yourself into, right? And also it's the excitement of like this guy I've worked with for over a decade has a new movie. This is a big deal. I'm gonna edit. Like, okay, let's rock and roll. How do you? I imagine the first read is just what I think, right? As a person reading a script, when do you start thinking about the job, and how do you kind of balance out that before you get started, right? When you're first starting to like your version of pre-production. It's just like your head starting to do the math of what we might be in for. How do you kind of balance that out?
Um, I mean, I guess it's kind of a hard question.
I know, get into like your thought process,
I
what
mean,
you
usually,
go.
like, I'll tell you what I did for this. Like this, I read the script. I actually read it twice in a row
Nice.
because, also you're not quite, you don't, I did, he didn't really tell me anything about it,
Yeah.
In
You're
fact, I
gonna have a
didn't
job.
know, yeah, but I didn't know it was like based on a Pynchon book, like, so I really had nothing. So I kind of was first reading it and I didn't really, get the humor right away because it's like if I'm just thrown the script, you just don't really quite understand yet.
Yeah.
So then I was like, as I was getting it, as I was, once the Christmas adventure scenes are happening, I'm like, okay, I get it, understand. Then I went back and reread it, and the way that I was kind of able to compartmentalize it was like it kind of was Paul's take on like a Coen Brothers movie with Pynchon, with
Yeah.
like mixed with Inherent Vice. That's what I was saying,
Okay.
but I didn't know it was based on Vineland
Yeah.
or based on elements of Vineland, and then kind of like also with like a Tarantino like twist
Oh yeah.
as well, So that's kind of where I like approached it, how I approached it when I first then met with them, and then we were just talking about, that some of the set pieces weren't like fully established yet and really in the script. Like there was kind of a chase in the end, but it wasn't like the form where it ended up being.
Yeah.
And there was like a chase after the bank robbery, but it was maybe like half a page.
Yeah.
So I was like, well, I don't really know what that's going to be.
Yeah.
Um, and then I remember there was kind of like stuff, not, I don't want to say like newspaper headlines, but there was more stuff that was kind of more like in the world, like
Yeah.
reports and stuff about French 75, which we ended up not doing and kind of keeping it contained, like just in its own movie world.
Yeah.
Um, so, you just start imagining like what the sequences might
Yeah.
be like. That's really what I'm doing is I'm like, kind of knowing how he shoots things and how, I kind of had I think Leo had already been cast by that point. So I kind of had an idea that it was going to be him, but we didn't know it was going to be Benicio for that role.
Oh yeah.
We didn't know. Obviously, we didn't know that Chase hadn't been cast yet, and we ended up doing screen tests with her like early on in the process with like some different actresses. So then from reading the script, you're kind of watching the screen test, and you're kind of trying to imagine, okay, which of the three are going to be the best with Leo and everything, and when I ended up meeting with them, and he was just talking about how this obviously was going to be a bunch of different genres. It was going to be comedy and action, and it was going to be kind of like absurd, but it still had to have this like emotional core of like a father-daughter relationship. So
Yeah.
like that was always kind of our North Star, like from the beginning, which is why
Right.
it was so important to get such a great actress like Chase to work with Leo. Even though they're not in that many scenes together, you really have to have that really good initial bond in that like breakfast table scene,
Yeah.
we call it, so that there's a good payoff at the end.
Oh, it doesn't work without her is the thing. And like, I'm sure you read that and you're like, well, we hope this person exists. Like, good job, Paul. That's gonna be really easy to find. All right. Right. That's not my
Well, yeah, I know, but I mean, Cassandra, who's been his casting, you know, doing casting like for all of his
yeah.
movies, like, she's so good at finding people, like digs these people out of the woodwork, and it's amazing, And then all the non-actors that she was able to find in El Paso, especially
Oh yeah.
the nurses, the skateboarders, like everybody in the perfume shop, like it's so fun because there's the
Oh yeah.
authenticity there, and the Danvers is like, a lot of times some of those scenes are not really scripted. They're like roughly scripted, but Paul's like, do what you would do if you're interrogating kids. You're trying to find someone, just start interrogating them and intimidate them, and just we'll see what
Oh,
happens.
that scene is terrifying because he's sort of nice and then he turns it on to like, well, you're probably dead. So like,
Yeah,
oh God, you've said this before. This was
I
okay.
know. I know. He's
You're
so, and it just kind of came off like
yeah.
flew off the tongue. It's not like it really is helpful for that because they can just kind of go into their mindset of like how they are, and they're not
Oh,
an actor, they're not realizing I'm talking to Leo, I'm talking to somebody, or I have a huge camera in my face. It kind of in a way like puts them at ease.
that's
So it's genius, it's smart.
oh yeah, 'cause that's just their life. And if you have an actor doing it, like you know, Leonardo DiCaprio, good actor, right? Can pretend to be people he's not, but like there is still that little bit of like, how do I figure out how to be that? And when I'm just sitting around in makeup, that's not who I am. And that's, sometimes you see that. And like doesn't mean it's not a good performance, but it would be different if there was a
Mhm.
real actor there. Like I remember for Don't Look Up, I was talking to Melanie Linsky, who was his wife, and she was like, we were in the chair together, just like getting makeup done, and he was just like looking on like Zillow at houses, and like we were making fun of him, like, what are you doing? You're shopping? Like you're just shopping. This is fun for you, like because you just like, oh, that's normal Leo. All right, so if you then made him into this heartless monster, it wouldn't work, right? There's something about for that role, and a lot of the extras just having them be the person, right? And then all of a
Uh-huh.
sudden, your work as an editor is easy because you don't have to tinker with what they're doing because they're already doing the thing.
Yeah.
It it's amazing. And then as we sort of wrap up, I was curious, like I'm sure you've seen it with an audience by now. Like, what is it like when you see either the car chase or in the first act when they start getting taken out and like there's an audible gasp in the crowd, like how do you, obviously you kind of have a feeling you've done a good job, right? And Paul's told you you've done a good job, but like how does it feel when an audience tells you you've done a good job, when like you get the shock of like a sudden attack or like the car chase works, like how does that feel?
I mean, yeah, it's like the best thing. It's almost like you're watching the movie, for the first time again.
Yeah,
That's why these, we had done some test screenings when before we locked, and that's why they were so important because yes, we did get a big gasp when Alana Haim is
yeah,
shot, and it's like okay, that worked, that really
yeah,
worked. And when Leo like falls off the roof, like big gasp or
yeah,
big laughs, so it was important to do the test screenings, because there's a lot happening, and there's obviously it's like we're social commentary, and there's thing culturally relevant and things that are happening, political, and just to kind of see what people's reactions are going to be like. But also just for the humor, and to make sure that the humor and the tonal changes were working, the jokes were working, and then figuring out like, okay, where can we like even go further with some of the jokes
yeah,
just to like punch it up even more, and realizing that Sensei was like played so great in the
yeah,
screenings, so it's like, what else can we get from him? What more can we do? And then making sure that the ending worked and that was like an emotional payoff. So yeah, screenings are so important, and it is like the best feeling to just be like sitting in there and being like, this is working, it's
oh,
working, it's working. Or when it's not working, then you also are like, okay, what do we got, what can we
yeah.
cut out, what can we get rid
Well,
of?
that's it. Like if it's not working, but you know why it's not working, like okay, good, okay, this is helpful. It's when you're like, boy, I thought we did a good job. Oh shit. Oh, okay. That's problematic. But like if you're like, I'm waiting to see if they like, okay, they didn't laugh. All right, good. That answers that question. Like asking
Yeah,
questions
it
is
does
good.
make it kind of scientific in a way, which
Yeah,
is nice. That you of course are always wanting to you know trust your artistic gut and figure out which things work or don't work. But like for the jokes,
yeah.
if you try it a couple times and it doesn't get a laugh, it's either the timing is off or it just isn't funny. And you
Yeah.
know what? Maybe it was just funny to us in the cutting room. Let's try something else.
Yeah. It's never gonna not be funny to me. But if it's not funny to a million people, I
Yeah,
guess
I mean,
million
and
people
you,
don't.
you don't cut out everything that's like that, but
Yeah.
there's just like you can say, okay, well, let's see if we could get something else
Oh,
there.
yeah.
So that's just kind of fun. It's like
Oh,
a
yeah.
puzzle, really,
Totally.
because you always are trying to like make it the best version it could be.
Yeah. And I think kind of the best compliment I can give you is that the movie flies by. Like it's essentially feels like a 90-minute movie. Like that there isn't fat and there isn't a pacing issue in a movie that does also, I feel like, take its time. Like it's sort of the secret, right? How do you make a movie that's long but feel short? And it's just keep people invested, have the type of movie you're watching kind of shift a little bit periodically, and no one will ever look at their watch. Like I remember that getting to that last scene and being like, oh, I was convinced we had like 45 minutes left. Like, oh, okay, cool, good
Hmm.
job. Like this is the rare movie that could have been longer and not lost it because I think you guys were just in such a zone, and that's rare. So beyond all the acclaim and potential, award stuff that's about to happen, I think you should just be proud that like made a damn near perfect movie.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you for doing this, man.
No problem. Nice
Awesome.
to meet you.
Likewise. Thank you.